Welcome to the Modcast, episode number 3. Today, we're talking to none other than one of my co-founders, Gary Roth, co-CEO of Modern Wealth Management, on the Modcast, all about the dirty little secrets of organic growth and why you should care. I think we have 3 pretty good topics today. Gary, welcome to our show, the Modcast. It's you and I, the host. And today we're going to dive a little deeper on that CityWire series of articles that you wrote. And this is the second article in that series. We're going to get to something called the treadmill, no more free lunches, and why you should really care about this as it relates to your firm value. Welcome.
Thanks, Gordo. Welcome to you too.
Yeah, this is fun, man. I got to tell you, we're in sunny Southern California today, and I'm looking forward to this one. It's the 3rd episode in the series. We're going to get into all kinds of stuff on this show. We're going to get into M&A. We're going to get into something I've been calling the dirty dozen. We're going to talk about why PE is good for the industry, organic growth, like today's topic. We'll talk about tech stacks. We'll talk about getting your firm ready. We'll talk about the next generation of advisors. We're going to do some behind the scenes stuff at some point on why we love the deal or why we didn't like the deal. But today's all about organic growth. And why don't you introduce the article that you wrote in CityWire?
Yeah. So the first or the last episode here, episode 2, we talked about the dirty little secrets of organic growth and some of my thoughts about why growth rates in the industry are pretty low, extremely low, depending on what your perspective is. And the second piece I wrote, which we're going to take some of the themes from today, was about, why you should care if you're an advisor, because part of my conclusion, in the first one was part of the reason why growth is low is that a lot of people just aren't really working on it because of the reasons laid out there, which were that people might be happy with the amount of money they're making, and that growth costs money and you have to invest in it before you get it. So you're going to actually make your income go down. And, for most of the last 16 years now, dating back to early 2009, when the market started recovering from the global financial crisis, there's been, in most years, and frankly, probably in far and away most quarters, a free lunch in the market going up. So those things are all true. And I think part of the conditions why organic growth is relatively low in the RIA marketplace, and in fact, lower than wealth management as a whole, interestingly enough, based upon research that I just saw this week at the Tiburon conference in Boston. But so today is a little bit more about, if you're not focused on growing organically and you're an advisor, why you should care, beyond the obvious of it's nice to grow, but maybe a few more details of why you should care and why you should think about it a little bit more.
Nice. Yeah. Well, and remember, to those who are tuned in episode 2, we talked about the 3 things that we believe are important about driving organic growth. Number 1, you have to have a war chest. You have to have a budget to throw at this. And you just talked about, some advisors don't want to throw money at marketing, or they don't want to try new things to drive interest in their firm because you literally might just be throwing money away, right? You don't know until you start. And the dollars that you spend today are not going to come back for 6, 9, 12, 15 months at times. So it's really hard to stand there and just spend money. So number 1's a war chest. Number 2 is speed to the opportunity. Having a team that's dedicated, focused, and is driving towards positive outcomes in driving growth in your firm. And then lastly, it's that consistent, predictable, all the time process and experience that those new prospects that are meeting your firm are going through. So when an advisor sits down and meets with them, the person on the phone that was talking to them, the person that welcomed them into your office or onto a call, the advisor themselves that are sitting in the room, the deliverable they're receiving, it's all coordinated, connected, and consistent, right? So those 3 things, war chest, speed to the opportunity, and a predictable process, that was part of the last episode of this. But let's talk about, okay, so I'm an advisor. I'm making a bunch of money. I'm pretty happy. My team's happy. My clients seem happy. But if I'm not growing, why is that such a problem?
Well, so there's so many reasons why it's a problem, Gordo, but look, we'll focus on a couple of things today. One is what and I don't even know if it's an original concept, but what I call the treadmill effect,
Mhm.
um, which I think almost every advisor in this business should recognize quickly what that is. But unless you're maybe a younger advisor with young accumulator clients and only young accumulator clients, um, you have a natural rate and a consistent rate of outflows in your business every year. So you're going to have systematic withdrawals if you have people who are, above the RMD age. You're going to have non-systematic withdrawals from people who they have the audacity to spend money on things.
How dare
And
they?
what's that?
How dare they?
How dare they? Yeah, yeah.
Use
But
their money? What? Yeah.
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And no one thinks that. But I mean, it's just, it's part of it's just, guess what? People buy things. Um, and then, of course, you're going to have clients who pass away where you don't keep the next generation. Um, and the statistics are that you are very unlikely to keep the next generation, like less than 20% of people who inherit money stay with their parents' advisor. Um,
And that number's
and
going down from year to year.
right,
It's not getting better. It's worsening.
right. And then there are people who fire you because they just, for whatever reason. So you're going to have withdrawals and terminations. And so when I say the treadmill effect, we all know what it means. Like you get on a treadmill and you put it at a certain speed and you have to walk at that speed just to keep from flying off the back of the treadmill. Well, your business, if you're not adding at least as much in assets as what's going out the door, so adding the equivalent number of assets or amount of AUM as what's going out the door just keeps you on the treadmill without flying off the back. If you don't add any assets, you're flying off the back. You're going down. You're going downwards. You might not be going out of business, but you were going downwards. And the higher the rate of your withdrawals and terminations, the faster that treadmill is moving, and the more you need to add just to stay near the front of the treadmill and not at the very back where you're just trying not to go flying off. And so, if you have a 2 or 3% systematic withdrawal rate and a 2 or 3% termination rate, which are pretty normal throughout the industry, you're going to need to add 4 to 6% of AUM just to stand still. So that's hard, and that is, that's a starting point for the business. And so if you're not already investing in and engaging in growth mindset activities, you're going to have a hard time even staying on the treadmill, let alone getting the treadmill to slow down. And I guess to really beat the dead horse of this analogy, to make this treadmill slower and easier would be that you are actually exceeding your withdrawal and termination rate and have net positive flows, which is what organic growth is. And so if you're not working on that, then if you get into every year and it's like, well, how am I going to replace these assets? It's not going to be a natural part of anything that you're already working on or doing or investing in. It's going to be like a series of Hail Marys, like, okay, I got to call these people, or I've got to call in some favors, or I need to start asking for referrals again, which I haven't done in a long time. And while it might sound obvious and like an exaggeration as the way I'm putting it, there's just a lot of businesses out there that look exactly like that. And for all the reasons I think outlined in the first article and in the last podcast. So that's the first thing is like, if you want to get that treadmill to slow down or maybe like get off the treadmill and be walking forward on land, you got to have organic growth. And it's not going to just come at the snap of a finger if you haven't been working on it.
Yeah. What's crazy, I love the statistic that Chip Rome, it's been 18 months, 24 months now that this was out, but 77% of all new dollars coming into our industry, the RIA space, are going to 6% of firms. That's crazy. So who are these firms? Well, they tend to be the largest firms in the industry. because they're
ones
in
who
the
are
retail
investing in
referral
this.
programs, right? They're
Yeah.
in the Schwab program or the Fidelity program,
Right.
or they're investing a significant amount of their budget
Right.
into marketing programs to generate opportunity, right?
Yeah. Or both. Yeah.
Or both. And if we're talking about large firms, they're absolutely doing all of the above, right? They're in the referral programs. They have business development people. They have marketing people. They have a big digital spend. They're using third party, lead gen sources. They're using anything and everything because they know that they've got to grow at some double digit rate to have real enterprise building up, enterprise value building up through, from year over year. If you're a $300 million firm and let's just say that you lose 5% a year to death, distribution, just spending, client termination. We haven't even talked about divorce, but let's just say 5% comes off the top on a $300 million firm. That's $15 million. And a lot of advisors say, oh, the market's going to give me that. Well, it has, and I think that's your point in the next topic, which is no more free lunch. But if I'm a $300 million firm and I know 15 million's walking out the door over the next 12 months, the question I'm asking myself is, how do I put 30 million back on the books? Not 15 that left, but how do I grow this thing to some, just 5, 6, 7%?
Yeah. So then the second point and again, I don't think people consciously do it, but the free lunch of, you look at the end of the year, it's like, well, my revenue went up, my AUM went up, my fees went up, my income went up because, last year, how much was what was I don't even know. Like, you stop tracking. Was the S&P was up like 24% last year or something like that?
One of those bumpy years or,
right.
anomaly years. And,
Right.
but advisors, their P&Ls, let's say they were allocated half to equities and half to something else. Their P&L probably went up 12 to 15%, and they think they're growing.
Right. Right. Because they are growing, but not because of anything they're doing. So if that free lunch stops, and by the way, when the free lunch stops, it doesn't just stop coming, it goes the other way. So it's like, it's not just you're not getting the free lunch. It's like someone stealing food from you because the market's going down. It's not like, we're not talking about like, oh, we're going to be flat for 3 years,
Yeah.
So it just, I wrote that almost a year ago. It just so happens, as we're recording this, whoever's listening to this, the 10 of you that might be listening to it, you may be listening to it now, shortly after it's released, or you may be listening to it in the future, but we happen to be recording this in early May of 2025. And the market for the last month has been through a period of very high volatility and has been down a lot more than it had been down since, I think, 2022. It could be up by the time this is being listened to. It'll move around. It won't be in the same place. We know that, but
we can guarantee that. That's the one guarantee we can make.
But the point about when you have a negative period, and you hope they're not sustained, but you don't control it. And you think about a period like during what's commonly referred to as the GFC or global financial crisis in 2008, 2009, fueled heavily by the subprime mortgage crisis, which in the hindsight didn't really last for all that long in terms of the downturn, but it took a while, I think, to get back to par, if you will. But when other businesses, we're in a service business, right? We serve clients.
Mm-hmm.
We not only serve clients, we're advising them on their financial lives. So when the markets are in turmoil, and particularly when they're down, tends to be when advisors are busiest. You could think of it as like, this is when you really earn your fee, right? Keeping people calm, keeping them from making bad short-term decisions if they can afford to stay invested. But certainly being there for them and explaining to them what's going on and adjusting and course correcting their plan and their investment plan as needed, which may very well be needed. And so this is your busiest time, and yet it's happening when your cash flows are now being hit. Your revenue is down, but guess what? Your expenses are not going down, because when you need to be there for your clients, you can't cut costs. You're not firing staff or, woe unto you if you have to, because what are you going to do? How are you going to take care of people? So, like, what big corporations do when earnings are going to take a hit, the big ones really do it even before earnings are going to take a hit to protect their earnings. The 45,000 employees, they'll just cut 4,500 employees. They'll hire them all back when things are getting better, but they're going to protect their earnings by being like, well, sales are down, so we don't need as many people. But those are people who are not on the front line of selling, probably, and not on the front line of producing whatever is going to be sold. Well, we can't do that in this business. So when revenue is down is when we need our people the most. And so you don't have that choice. And so if you don't have any way to grow, then hey, listen, many people are like, hey, okay, I'm going to have a bad year. I'm going to have a bad couple of years. My income's going to be down. Great. We still pay less in taxes. That's true, and that's fine. But if you don't have a growth strategy, then you're just waiting for the markets to come back, basically. And by the way, when there is a crisis, that's the greatest time to be talking to prospects, because that's when people need help. That's when people need good advice and good advisors.
Yeah, I was going to say, when I was an advisor, Gary, I spent the first 16 years in this industry as an advisor. That's when I had my greatest moments of growth, was when the markets got bumpy. I can remember I would tell prospective clients, hey, call your person and see if they're at the office at 3:00 when you're talking to me at 3. Call and see if they're even at the desk, right?
Yeah.
If you can even get them on the phone. And most advisors, because they're, they get to a point where they're happy with the money they're making. They get to a point where they're not working all that hard at client service. It's very easy to take and build a business in those periods. You just be available. Just make the phone calls, do the work.
Yeah. So, but you can't jumpstart a strategy when you don't have one at the moment you need it. It's like if you live in a place that has storms in the summer and power goes out, some people might have candles, flashlights, some people might have generators, but you can't wait till the power's out to go figure out what your strategy is to be able to see things, in the dark. And,
Right.
let alone like have a refrigerator. So anyway, I love these bad analogies, but so that's another aspect. And it's when you had, again, 16 years of pretty much straight up, yeah, it's easy to not be prepared. Just like if you haven't had a power outage in a long time, the batteries are probably dead in the flashlight and you don't know where it is, and there are no matches, and et cetera, et cetera. But then you're gonna suffer the consequences, right? And
Yeah. All right. So that's the treadmill, right? We gotta outrun. We gotta outrun distribution, death, divorce. Clients using their money to go live their life with, and you've got to stay ahead of that to have a valuable growing firm. We talked about no more free lunch. In other words, the markets they're not going to solve all the problems, because they're going to have problems from time to time. But let's talk about firm value. What happens, if I do have we talk to a lot of firms every year. I think we talked to 300 firms last year. So we're very active in talking to, of the 15,500 RIAs in the space, a few hundred of them a year, right? So we see great growing businesses. We see young advisors that have great growing businesses. We've seen some pretty poorly run businesses. We've seen some older advisors that have maybe waited too long to start talking about joining a firm. And it all gets down to firm value. And one of the things that we're looking at, and I like a point that you make regularly, which is, let's not look at 2021, because everybody had an amazing 2021, because everybody was at home and didn't have anything to go do. So they just accumulated money and the markets did pretty well. So when you strike that from these businesses and you look at 22 and 23 and 24 and what's happening in 25, one of the things we look at is, are you bringing on NNA, net new assets, or, are you bringing organic growth to the firm? Because that becomes part of the puzzle of the math that we're looking at when we're evaluating a potential partner. What happens if I have no organic growth or very little organic growth? What happens?
I'll use another analogy, though maybe a little less tortured than the generator and the candles. Um, everyone who's out there who's an advisor, they may not pick individual stocks today, they may never have, but they certainly are helping select portfolios for their clients. There's different kinds of portfolios. There's obviously, different styles of investing, but we all know how the public markets treat earnings and earnings growth, and valuing growth, not just total earnings, but growth rates, and high growth firms and growth stocks are usually the ones that get a premium, right? So the private market is not as efficient as the public market, but it still has its own way of sorting through earnings, if you will, and growth rates. And the more you're growing, the more valuable you are. Within whatever range people are willing to pay for things, you're going to be at the top end of the range. And the less you're growing, the more you're going to be probably still fine, for you, but you're not going to be maximizing the value of your firm, or even not even close to maximizing the value of your firm. And, or all the opportunities you might have in terms of who you might want to join, who your team might be able to work with. The people who are growing at super high rates, they call the shots, and they're the 800-pound gorillas.
Yeah, they're the ones everybody wants to talk to.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So where does an 800-pound gorilla sit?
Wherever it wants.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's, that's growth. And by the way, I would just say, easier said than done, like how do you do it? That's another question we'll talk about in another episode. And there's obviously no one answer, but, again, this is back to sort of the premise of like, what me worry. If anyone remembers Mad Magazine, okay, when you get to that point where you're like, okay, I'm really ready to go out and see what my firm is worth and pick a partner and monetize at least some of my life's work, you are going to be, you will find partners for sure. I'm not going to tell anyone they're not going to find partners.
Every business has a willing buyer. Every business has it. Yeah. Somebody will buy the business.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But it's like another analogy, one extremely well, real estate. If you can have a property in a great neighborhood, you can have two properties in the same neighborhood. They could even be the same square footage, same size lot, but what's the quality of the property? If one has a lot of deferred maintenance and, isn't landscaped and all of that, it's not going to get as much as the one that has been well-maintained, improved, new kitchens, modern, clean design, whatever is popular in your area. It's the same thing. So now the RAA neighborhood is a good neighborhood.
It's a great neighborhood.
Yeah. So there's some of it is the location, the location's good, but within the location, there's going to be prime and there's going to be not so prime, depending upon some things, including growth.
Yeah, it's not just growth. It's the next generation talent that exists in the business. It's how old are the clients? Are they in distribution or are they in accumulation? What's the revenue mix? What's the age breakdown by decade? Do you have one really large $100 million client in your $300 million book of business, and you're at $200 million, or $200 million of $1 million clients? Like all that stuff gets into the equation and played with and talked about, but organic growth and having a good growing firm, it just puts you in a different category, right? And again, there are buyers that are willing to buy every single RIA in the industry. So it's not that you have to grow in order to transact, but it certainly will help you attract a bigger opportunity set of buyers.
Yeah. It's
Absolutely.
going to improve your opportunity set and it's going to improve your actual outcome.
Yep. Yeah. Hey, hopefully y'all learned something from this. We're just gonna keep talking, and we're gonna have a lot of fun on the Modcast. I'm Gordo. This is Gary. We're the co-hosts. And again, we're gonna get into all kinds of stuff. We'll get deep into M&A and what matters and what doesn't matter. We'll continue the organic growth story. We'll talk about tech and a platform and what it should look like and what it needs and how you should use it. We'll talk about the next generation advisor. We'll talk about deal or no deal. I don't know what we're going to talk about next, but we're going to be out and we're going to have fun. And hopefully you'll learn a little bit along the way. So, Gary, thanks so much for your insight on driving organic growth, the dirty little secret. And they can go to CityWire and I'm sure either put in the search bar Gary Roth or Modern Wealth, and those articles could be found. But talk to us. Let us know what you want to hear about. We're willing to talk about anything on the Modcast. So long. All right, everybody. We are available on all your favorite podcast channels. However you like to listen. Spotify, YouTube, I don't know, Apple. There's all kinds of channels out there. Just go subscribe, like, share, and we'd love to hear from you. We'd love for you to like our show.
And go to modcast.show if you want to connect with us and our team and let us know what you want to hear about.
Thanks, Gary. I forgot that part. Yeah.